In this video, I'll be showing you how to trace a bitmap in Inkscape. You may be already familiar with the fact that Inkscape is a vector program, whereas something like Photoshop or GIMP deals with raster graphics or bitmaps. The main difference is bitmaps are composed of little pixels or colored dots on the screen, and vectors, they're composed of mathematical paths, so you can keep zooming in and never get any pixelation. So Inkscape has a way to trace a bitmap. Right here I have two bitmaps imported into Inkscape, and the way I did that was simply to drag my picture into Inkscape, and then you have two options, embed or link. If you choose link, your Inkscape file will depend on the fact that your original image files stay the same and not be deleted. So it's usually better to choose embed. It'll make your file a little bigger, but it's safer in the long run. So to trace a bitmap, go to Path, third option down, Trace Bitmap, or Shift+Alt+B. This window pops up. There are two main modes, single scan, which creates one path and one color, and multiple scans, which creates groups of colored paths. So to actually trace a bitmap and convert it to a path, click on it, and then click OK. And you may have noticed the bounding box got smaller. It's actually because it made a duplicate, which is now a path. And as I zoom in, you can see it is a path. Now I can do the same thing for this colored version, but look what happens. If I press OK now, it only copied the T and the X. Thing is, the threshold over here isn't high enough, so it didn't count the E and the second T. So change it to something like 0.6, works for this image, but you're probably going to have to change it for anything you do. Now if I do it, it copies the entire thing to a path. Edge detection, it basically traces around your image. You can also change the threshold of the edge detection, which is basically the same as brightness cutoff. Color quantization is pretty much the same as brightness cutoff. See, it creates a black and white version. And do it for both. On to multiple scans. Brightness steps doesn't seem to work for color images. See, if I do it on the black and white one, it creates this. But if I do it on the color one, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't even create a path. This may be a bug in Inkscape, but I just can't get it to work. Colors is a very important one, and the main thing you need to pay attention here is the scan number. Now, this is how many colors there will be in the actual finished image. One interesting thing is if you press 1 and then go to a different box, it's changed its number to 2. And if I try and say that this image has 4 colors, press OK, there's no red. The reason is you always need to add one more to the amount of colors you want in the image. So 5, now press OK. And this is the path with 4 colors. Grays is basically the same as colors, except it produces a grayscale rendition. And of course, you need to make sure you have the number of colors correct. Now I'll show you one of these examples where Trace Bitmap doesn't work very well. If I do 5 colors, see, this is terrible. And even if I amp it up to like 50 colors, even this, it's a very complicated image, and so that's the limitation of the Trace Bitmap. It works very well for simple things, but you're hard-pressed to get a great copy of something that's so complicated. And I'll just demonstrate these options here on the bottom. Smooth, of course, it smooths out the path, so if you have any rough patches, like my X is definitely rough in this first one, it helps smooth out the path. Remove background, it does what it says, removes the background. This image is on a white background, but now my traced version, you can see, is transparent. Stack scans. It's hard to explain, but I'll show you one with stacked scans and then with this unchecked. Now if I ungroup this and ungroup this, you'll see the difference. Right here I have a T, and then I also have a green and a blue and purple. The purple is behind everything, even though the E is the only purple letter. It is subtractively down to the T, which only has the T. And this makes it so there's no gaps, but can be a little confusing if you're trying to edit these paths later. So you may want to go for the unstacked scans, which, as you can see, here's the T, the E, the X, and the T, and they only refer to the specific color they have. Although I barely scratched the surface of this topic, this was an introduction on how to trace bitmaps in Inkscape.